Let's rev those engines and burn those tires because it's time for Top End Talk with Nitro Alley.
Thank you, Bob Beck, for that introduction. And thank you for joining us today on Top End Talk with Nitro Alley. I am your host, Nitro Alley, and I am beyond excited about my special guest today. You know him from Street Outlaws, No Prep Kings, with some other really amazing things coming. The Gentle Giant and the man with the golden heart, Jim Howe. Thank you so much, Jim, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be
And
here.
I know everyone knows you from the hit TV show Street Outlaws, No Prep King series, but you have actually been racing for a really long time. So way back in the day, how did you first get introduced to racing?
Well, my dad was a racer. Dad was he was a street racer that grew up street racing, and he got so many tickets that he lost his license and then couldn't get insurance. And that's the story as I know it and as he told it to me. And then so he started track racing and put his street racing days behind him and began drag racing. And I grew up around it, so it's kind of second generation. This is kind of our lifestyle, and it's what we do.
Awesome. Now, would you mind sharing just your racing progression leading to Street Outlaws?
No, not at all. It's lengthy. I actually I'll get to this at the end because it'll all make sense. This is my 36th year with an NHRA competition license, and I started when I got my NHRA license. I got my NHRA license when I was younger than I should have been to get said license, because at the time it just said that you had to have a driver's license in order to get your NHRA license. Well, Bill Bader, who was a good friend of my dad's, and my dad owned Central Michigan Dragway back in the day, and Bill Bader was my dad's mentor. So dad was a racer, and then all of a sudden he became a track owner. And then I grew up being a track owner's son, and we had this NHRA quarter mile facility, and I raced anything that we had that had wheels. We lived on the property, so I was racing all the time, any chance that I got to throw something down the racetrack. And I was young. I mean, I was driving when I was 12 or 13 years old. So Bill Bader had said, hey, come up here and get your license. We'll do a license, deal at the track. And I went up there and I got my first license, and Bill Bader actually signed my first competition license. And that was kind of a cool deal. So I raced the high school drags. I won 2 back-to-back high school drags, and then I was told that I could no longer compete because I was a professional. Don't know how that happened, but anyway, won my first NHRA Super Comp event at 16. Won my first track championship at Milan Dragway in Milan, Michigan when I was 16 also. Went on to bracket race, graduated high school. People were like, how'd you go from Michigan to Tennessee? Well, I didn't say that I was the smartest kid in the room, but I did have a wrestling scholarship, and I was looking at schools that were centrally located so I could continue to drag race. And that way I could get back to school on Monday. So I picked Tennessee because in Michigan, if you want to race in the off season or wintertime, it's a long drive to go to Florida. But from Tennessee to Florida, what really wasn't too big of a deal. So started doing that, bracket racing, running all the big money bracket races, doing some 890 super comp stuff, in the interim also. And then that moved into IHRA Top Dragster when they first started Top Dragster. I began racing in the IHRA when Top Dragster first started. Went on to win several national events. And then I grew up with another legend in the sport, and that was Keith Szabo. And Keith and I grew up together. His dad and my dad were very good friends. And Keith called me one day, probably around 97, probably around 1997. And he said, hey, what are you doing today? And I said, not much of nothing. Why? What do you got going on? He said, do you know where Jackson, Tennessee is? No, not really. He said, well, look on the map. So, we didn't have GPS back then. You had to own a map, really. So I looked on the map and I said, well, it's not far. It's like, I don't know, a couple hundred miles. He said, why don't you come out to Jackson, Tennessee? We're doing a heads up outlaw race. He said, I got a car that I'm going to drive. It's a small tire car, and it was the heads up outlaw small tire racing. So I went out there and I went to my very first outlaw 10-5 race. This was in, I want to say 97-ish. And I was exposed then to something like I'd never seen before. And that was these wild small tire cars with big motors in them and nitrous and all this other stuff. And I was like, man, this is really cool. Like, I want to do this. So at the time, I had a Danny Nelson dragster that we ran top dragster with. And that car would go 430s, 440s in the 8th mile. It was a lot of fun. It was a fast car, especially in that time period. But you go make a fast pass and like nobody really thought a lot about it. But this place was packed to the hills with people watching these small tire cars. And so I left that event. Keith won. I left that event and I came home and I put together my first small tire street car. And that paved the way for me to make really bad decisions that my dad wasn't real happy about. And I started doing a lot more street racing. And of course, we owned a drag strip here in Crossville, Tennessee at the time. And so that was a real, real conflict, if you would, because here we own a drag strip and I'm out street racing. Fortunately, never got in any major trouble. Not like we didn't get caught, we just didn't get in any major trouble. Then that moved into the eventual deal where I started running small tire cars, and that led into, then it went to heavy street, and I ran heavy street with a big tire car, and I crossed that car over, running some small tire events with Orska and so on and so forth. And then they came out with the drag radio deal really got to be a big thing. And Donald Long was putting on these radio races. And I, at the time, was putting on a no time heads up race here in Tennessee. And nobody knew what no time was. It wasn't a big deal, but we had a deal that was patterned around street racing, but was at the track and scoreboards off. We called it the bounty race. And the reason that we called it the bounty race, because it was like in street racing, you didn't get to show up in a town and call out the fastest guy there. You kind of had to work your way up. So what the bounty race was, I put this program together, and every year it started out fresh, and you had an eliminator that went on elimination. And the winner of that first race of the year, he was the bounty. The bounty stayed on him. So at the race number 2, he got to sit out. He didn't have to race in competition at all. He sat out the entire event until the final 2 cars raced. Then he came over to run the winner that won the event, and that was the bounty race final. So it was like you had to work your way up in order to get to the fastest guy. And that started our bounty race series that eventually grew into a really, really big deal, and into my no time promoting days. Then I decided that I wanted to try this drag radio stuff. So we started doing that. I went on and won a limited drag radio world championship. And in 2019, Discovery, Pilgrim called me and wanted me to come and race with them. Wanted to do a street deal, street filming. And I said, listen, I'm like right on the verge of winning a world championship in limited drag radio. If I win the world championship, then I'm yours. We'll come do the deal, and I'll convert the car over and we'll do street stuff, track stuff, whatever. I mean, you got me. I'll be there. So we went on, we won the world championship, and about 3 months later, phone rang. And they said, hey, what do you think about coming to, my first one was in, wasn't Montana, Wyoming. What do you think about coming to Wyoming and running fastest in America, street filming? And I said, just tell me what you need me to do. And they said, well, we want to put a team together. So I put a team together of Tennessee racers, guys that I'd raced with, and then COVID hit. That was the big start of COVID during all that time. And half of my team got sick with COVID. They couldn't go. It was either they got sick or their family members got sick, so whatever. Well, it was kind of a problem with everybody in the filming deal there, like all the teams, people that I knew, but we hadn't gotten to the filming spot yet. So they called me back and said, hey, we're going to partner you up with Kentucky. They're in the same situation. They've got a few cars, and we're going to make you guys one team. So I'm like, okay, cool. So we head out to Wyoming, and I meet, which was then Sherry Beth Madwell. And everybody thought that we were like super good friends or we were one team. And the reality is I'd only ever met her right there at the spot. And she went on to create a pretty good public opinion of herself on that show. And some liked her, some didn't, but she was extremely wild and very charismatic, if you would, very, very spoken. And that was a complete wild time all by itself. We learned a lot. And then somehow or another that got crossed around to where Sherry Beth was my wife. The general public thought that she was my wife. And so then it was said she was my girlfriend. And nope, my wife was with me. My wife, Amanda, who is also an accomplished drag racer, she was definitely there with me. And Sherry Beth was definitely not my wife. But that started it all. So we did some street filming during COVID, several shows. And then when No Prep Kings started back up, I crossed over and started running No Prep Kings. And I was using my drag radio car, which was definitely not set up to run with a tube chassis Pro Mod style car. So our first year we ran like 500 or 600 pounds overweight with a back half car competing against tube chassis cars. And we ended up finishing, I think, 13th in the points, which was pretty good considering, the real disadvantage we were at. So I built a brand new car that year. And then we came out and went on to win multiple No Prep King title events. Meanwhile, still racing our small tire stuff. By this time, my son, who was also crewing with me when I won the world championship, at that time, he was 13 or 14. And then went on to, we put him a small tire car together. And at 16 years old, he was the youngest ever driver to win a No Prep Kings race. And he won a small tire event at 16. And now he's driving my GTR that John Odom had drove previously. And Jimmy's been doing that. He's running Pro 275 with it and doing some other stuff with the car now. I went on and continued. We had a good year this year. We missed the world championship by 2 rounds. 2 rounds that really probably the toughest 2 rounds ever because I got disqualified in Bowling Green, Kentucky for testing inside of a 200-mile radius within 2 weeks of the event. And we learned then that good for thee and not for me. That is a rule that was unspoken. Some people can do that, but others can't. So I was disqualified from there, and ultimately that along with accumulation of other factors, changed the course of the year, really for us. And you can always look back and say what if and how come, or we can't say what if, but we know that we certainly would have had a better chance at it if we hadn't been disqualified from the race in Kentucky. I went on to win Outlaw Big Tire at the event because basically it was close to my home and I had a lot of hometown fans there. So we were there. We were going to race, DQ'd or not. We were going to race something. So that's a fast forward look. Multiple cars, multiple classes, multiple wins. I've been very blessed in the motorsports world and between promoting and racing and then now raising new racers. And so the one thing that I didn't add in there, and I'll tell you how the car I have now is named the Guardian, and it is spelled incorrectly for a reason, not because I'm a hillbilly and I don't know how to spell, but it is spelled incorrectly. But the reason it's spelled incorrectly and the reason the car got its name was in 2022, I lost my daughter, somebody that we never know, what's going to happen. But my daughter was my biggest fan, and she was my firstborn. She passed as a result of radiation and chemotherapy treatment from her cancer. She ended up being cancer free, but ultimately passed. And we'll just say that ultimately passed from radiation and chemotherapy or treatments from the cancer. So she was my biggest fan, and I left a street filming, to come home because she had been hospitalized and nobody knew why. She was in a medically induced coma. We came home. I spent several days with her, and then ultimately we were forced to pull the plug on her, and she passed. So she was my biggest fan. We just couldn't. I could do no wrong in her eyes. And I look back every day, look at, text messages and stuff. And so there's parents out there right now, I'm sure, that'll see this, listen to this, and there's probably some who have been through this, and the ones that have know that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to feel a certain way. It's been since 2022, and I still can't keep composure when I talk about her life and the things that she's done, and then ultimately losing her. But I said along the way, and I've said this for years, that the biggest legacy I'll leave behind will be my kids. So I said every morning for 6 months, every morning I'd get up, and she took baths. That was her thing. I never took baths. I was a shower guy. So for 6 months, I took a bath every morning in the bathtub that she took a bath in every morning. I don't know why. I don't have that answer. But that's what I did. During that 6-month time period, I wrote a poem that is on the back of my car. And when I got it done, I was like, I can't give it to her because she's not here. But she was my biggest fan. So I named the car after the poem. And I wrote the poem. And the poem was titled The Guardian.
I love that.
In order to not have a trademark infringement, the true spelling of The Guardian is actually a copyrighted trademark. So I spelled it incorrectly so that we'd never have to worry about a trademark infringement or a copyright infringement. And so that is how the name of the car, The Guardian, came about. It's a tribute to my daughter, and it's a good talking point for parents who have been through it and who definitely are not healed, because I don't know that any of us will be healed. I just tell everybody that it's okay to not be okay, and I'm here. Anybody that's been through that, they ever want to talk to me, reach out. We can ball it out together on the phone. It's perfectly okay with me. So that's how that whole deal came about. It's how the car got its name, and that's the story behind that. And so then I was like, well, what kind of legacy is she going to leave behind? She's not around anymore. So, like, my kids were going to be the legacy I leave behind. So what's her legacy? So several years ago, I started going around and doing inspirational talks to youth in school. My daughter was a special needs kid, and she was picked on, she was bullied, she was made fun of. We had those days, where she'd come home crushed, and I had to be there, to pick up the pieces. And so we started a program that is like an anti-bullying talk that focuses the kids around the negativity that is in our world and the social media influences and the cyberbullying and all the stuff that goes on. Went on to tell them that 40% of today's billionaires, and this is a real statistic, 40% of today's billionaires have learning disabilities. And so one of the things that I tell these kids is that, look, when you're making fun of that kid, because he's different or she's different or she talks different or she doesn't understand something the right way or whatever, understand that there's a 40% likelihood that kid's going to end up being your boss when you get older. And so that's going to be a real tough deal to have to overcome when you've been the one that's ostracized this child growing up, because I promise you, those kids don't forget it. They don't forget it when they become adults. They'll remember that bully in school. They'll remember that those kids that made fun of them. So we put that into our message, and I try to teach the kids to lean on each other, regardless of their differences. And so I kept telling my wife along the way, I was like, if we get a big sponsor, I'm going to do more of this stuff for these kids, because it's a cost, like going to these schools and doing the stuff and taking the cars and we give t-shirts away. We do all the stuff, like we make it fun. But, when you're in a school with 300 or 400 kids in a school assembly, I'm pushing this message across. You can't just be monotone. You can't, you got to get the kids involved, and there's a cost there. So we've absorbed the cost for several years. And I kept saying, like, if we get a big sponsor, we'll do more. If we get a big sponsor, we'll do more. Well, I just said, the hell with it. We're going to do it ourselves, and we're going to do more of it. And I'm tired of waiting. I might wait another, I'm 50, be 52 years old. My 36 year drag racing. If you look at statistically, I haven't been able to get one of those big sponsors so far. So I really wasn't, the cards didn't really line up for that to be a reality. So I just told her, I said, look, you know what? When we need a new blower, or we need a new set of tires, or we need this, or we need that, I've seemed to figure it all out. So we're going to put this program into play, and we're going to make it happen. And we're going to treat it just like it's something that we have to have. And we're going to put it into play. Well, so we've done that. Traveling around, we're doing more of it. We're using our Street Outlaws schedule to go in and out of these schools and try to see people, because we're already traveling anyway, so we might as well do something with it. Well, then I had a major brand who reached out, and they said, hey, we want to get involved in your nonprofit. And I said, you want to get involved in my drag racing? And they were like, oh, no, we don't sponsor race cars. And I said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. They said, well, you're a nonprofit. I said, I'm a drag racer. Everything I do is nonprofit. And they were like, no, the deal you're doing with the schools and the kids. And I was like, how do you even know about this? And they said, well, it just so happens that you were in a school where somebody from our upper side of management's kid went, and they came home and they're all kinds of excited about everything. And they told Dad, and then naturally Dad came in the office, and Dad told us, and then we kind of looked at it. And so we want to get involved. And I said, okay, well, it's not a nonprofit. I don't know how to get you involved. Like, if you want to sponsor the race car, then the more we do there, the more I can do with that. And he was like, no, we need to get you to set this up as a nonprofit. And I was like, okay, well, you're going to have to help me out, because I don't know what that entails. So I worked with their people in their corporate side of things, was able to hire an attorney, got some stuff taken care of, pushed the ball in the right direction. And as of February the 5th, which was like 45 days ago, we were able to get it registered, and we're in that process now, waiting on everything to come back through. But it hasn't stopped the wheels from turning. We have some very expensive t-shirts on the Howe Motorsports merch site that people see. They have a real big price tag on them, and they're priced like that to help with the cost of this stuff. And it's not a nonprofit as of yet. It's just you're buying a really expensive t-shirt right now, and that t-shirt money actually helps us do what we do. But that's how that works. And here very soon we'll have our IRS status, and all that stuff will be done. And then
you've got but I remember you talking, you said you've got an event coming up that's focusing on skilled trades,
So yes, that was our next big thing. So it takes me a lot of time to get these schools lined up. And then basically you got one day and you see one school. Well, in a perfect world, you could just schedule like 4 schools in a row and 4 days in a row, but it's not a perfect world and it doesn't work like that. So I came up with an idea to have multiple schools in one location and bring multiple schools to me. And so May 7th in Crossville, Tennessee, we're having a skilled trades and career expo where I bring employers in, I let them set up. I want them to teach these kids about what they do, meet them, greet them, talk to them, show them what you guys are all about, show them what you do. I'll give my presentation, my motivational talk, my keynote speaking. We have the cars on display. We do all that stuff. And then we turn the kids loose and let them go around and talk to these employers and get to see a little bit firsthand about what it is that these other jobs do. And also it gives the employer a chance to see some of these kids, because the one thing that I see when I talk to these employers is that they're like, Jim, like, man, it's like 1 out of 30 kids have any work ethic. And so now I've been kind of harping on our motivational Mondays that we do on our channel. I've been harping on the parents. Like, if your kid's 16 years old and doesn't know how to push a broom, that's your damn fault. You're the one that did that. Like, you need to teach your kid how to use a broom, teach your kid how to use a shovel. If you don't know how to find a neighbor that'll show you, because that's where we're failing the kids. The kids think that they're going to come out of high school with their high school diploma, and they're going to go to college and get an underwater basket weaving degree and end up being in a corner office somewhere making $300,000 a year at a tech firm. And that's a cool story, but it's not the reality. And so we have 40% of skilled trade workers are getting ready to age out, and only 1 in 5 kids in school know about skilled trades.
Well, what do you think, or how do you think that we can actually grow the skilled trade movement? Because like you said, it's diminishing and it's really not focused on in schools anymore.
And that's how it has to start, just like with what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? We have to let these kids know that there's other options. I deal with people. I own a bail bonding business. We bail bond in 13 counties. I have people will run ads looking for help. I'll have people who come in who have degrees that are useless. They've never done anything with. They can't even get a job in that field. But yet they've got 80 or 90 or $100,000 worth of student debt piled up in loans. And now they're stuck with all these loans and student debt because it was so easy for them to go do it. And then also now you have a large number of kids who are not kids, who are now grown adults. Allie, there's people mine and your age that are professional college students. That's what they do. And like, hello, that's the wrong path. Like, we need to teach these kids that they can go out and do this stuff and follow their dreams, have a skilled trade. And that's one of the things that I teach them. Like, it doesn't matter if you're into horses, if equestrian world is your world, there is a skilled trade job in the equestrian world that will come in handy. If you can be a contractor, if you can build a building, you can build a barn. If you're a social media person, if you're a cameraman, if you're a camera woman, all these things are, every one of these facets of life need those skilled trade workers. If you're a first responder, the equestrian world needs first responders. The drag racing world needs first responders. We need contractors. I need fabricators. We need welders. The horse world, same way. Any type of career path you're going to go down, or dream path, if you would, is going to need skilled trades. And so no matter what their dream is, we want them to be exposed to this other element, because I have friends. Matter of fact, one of the bigger unions here in this state, they're coming to our skilled trade deal because they see the value in it. Y12, the nuclear facility, which is right down the road from us, they're coming because they see a need for what we're trying to do. And they understand that if we don't get them now, they're going to get squirreled off on a path that might take us 4 or 5 years to get them reeled back in. And by that time, they're 25, 26, 27 years old, and they've already wasted that much time and piled up a bunch of student debt that now they're strapped with, and nobody's coming to save them. So it's an education thing. We just need to teach them that this stuff is available. CNC operators. Look at everything that we do in the world. Like everything
Absolutely.
we do. Right.
And I'm all for it. I've always been a huge advocate for it. My son is actually a machinist. I love it. I'm very proud of him. He makes very good money and he doesn't have the college loan debt that my other kids have.
right.
But the other thing that I'd kind of want your, 2 cents on is, okay, so they have an education, but what are the kids of today really not realizing what it takes to make it in the world, in the workforce?
Yep. And that's the one of the, like, I was never taught a lot of the basics. I was taught to go out and get a job. I mean, that's like, you need to be a sports medicine doctor. You need to be a chiropractor. You need to be an attorney. I probably would have made a good attorney, but it wasn't me. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't what I wanted to do. And if it's not where you want to be and it's not what you want to do, it's not going to be long term. You're just going to hate life. Like, how many people do we run across every day that, like, you run across them and you're like, my God, man, that person is miserable. They hate their job. And it's because they're stuck. And, like, to me, if you can have a job where you're happy and you're able to sustain yourself and have a lifestyle, and it's not a job that you consider to be a job, you look forward to going every day. I mean, is it going to be rainbows and unicorns every day? No. I mean, you're going to have problems. You're going to have bad days. And that's the one thing that I think that we as parents need to teach our kids, that it's okay to have a bad day. Like, we're all going to have them. You're going to have a day where just nothing goes right and you're a square peg in a round hole. And we're probably going to have a lot of them. And that's the reality of it is that I think that we as a nation have taught our kids that, like, if you do this, you're going to be up here and, like, everything's going to be perfect and you're not going to ever have any problems. And, that's the farthest thing from the truth. Like, they need to understand that you might come home from work one day to find your power turned off because you didn't pay your bill. You might come home from work one day and find out that your car is broke down and you don't have the money to pay for it. Like, so by learning some of this stuff, I feel like if my dad hadn't have been the fix-it-all, like, my dad was that guy, and he raised me to be that guy. When I didn't know plumbers existed. You know why? Because when our plumbing messed up, that was Dad. But Dad did that. Well, and then as I get older, like, Dad taught me how to do it. You needed a septic line done, you got out there and dug it. You needed electrical work done, you went and did it. I didn't know an electrician's phone number because we grew up, we didn't have the money to do that with. You know what I'm saying? If you wanted it fixed, you had to learn how to fix it. And so fortunately, I became a jack of all trades and a master of none, really. But it was okay because I was able to do it. And even today, when something breaks, I mean, if I don't know how to fix it, I'll figure it out. Like, I want to learn how to fix it. And there comes a time where we've lost that as society. It used to be the nuts and bolts. If you bought a car in the 60s, the owner's manual actually told you how to adjust the valves in the motor. The owner's manual told you how to do those things, change the points in the distributor. These
Not
kids
anymore.
today,
Yeah. Not anymore. You got to take it in.
No, they don't know. And so it's just one of those things I think that we can do better by exposing these kids to this stuff. I had a 35-year-old man who worked for me who had a big old jacked up Ford truck, big tires on it, big old mean truck. I needed him to drive a truck and trailer one day, and you'd have thought I asked him to kill his mother because he was, like, scared to death. And I said, what's the problem? He said, I don't know how to pull a trailer. I said, what do you mean you don't know how to pull a trailer? I don't know how. I said, well, hell, I'll drive it, drive mine. I'll pull a trailer. I said, but I'm going to teach you how to drive one of these. He said, it's not hard. I said, here, just drive my truck. I can't. What do you mean you can't? I can't drive your truck either. So why not? Your truck's a manual. And I was like, oh my God, bro, you're 35 years old. Well, it didn't stop there. Several months later, he called me. He was putting a ceiling fan up at his house. He was waiting on an electrician to get there to put a ceiling fan in. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm waiting on the electrician to get here to put the ceiling fan in. I said, what do you need an electrician for? They got to wire it or something? He goes, no. I said, I don't understand. Like, what's the problem? He said, I don't know how to do that. And I was like, oh my God. Okay. Stay right where you're at. I'll be there in a minute. I'm going to show you how to do it. And, I took him in and showed him where the breaker box was in the house. He didn't know. Owned his own house. Didn't know where the breaker box was.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, do you think some of that has to do with some of our youth or just recent generations being coddled so much that everything's been done for them? They haven't had to take the initiative to learn.
Absolutely it is. And it's not only have they been coddled, but it's been encouraged behavior.
Right. No, I completely agree. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up kind of on that same note, you talked about it on one of your motivational Mondays was grit. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand. Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah. So it's grit's something that a lot of parents, boy, that was a gritty podcast that night.
That was a great podcast.
So the biggest thing that we have that we don't do is we don't instill that grit into the kids. And I have a slogan that we're working on right now, and I'm looking through my notes because I wasn't prepared for this, and I should know it by heart, but I had about 37 different versions, and I settled on one. And because you're asking me right now, I don't want to get this wrong. But
sorry, I totally blindsided you on that, but I just loved that. I was going, yes, and even, did you find it?
Yeah, I did. So it's grit is gutsy resilience inspires triumph. And like I said, I had about 30 different plays on words that I went through and wanted, like, we're going to use that in our Horsepower for Kids deal. And that gutsy resilience inspires triumph. And basically it's just like, don't look at it like you can't do it. Do it. Like, there's no reason. When I went over and showed him how to put that ceiling fan up, I said, man, it's 3 wires. Like, this is not like, we're not reinventing the wheel. This is simple. He didn't know where the breaker box was in the house. I was blown away. Like, these are things that I've taken for granted all my life because it was how I was raised. But then I realized that, like, this guy wasn't the minority. This guy was truly that way. And he was that way because he was a product of his environment. And so it's one of those things, like, we want to teach the kids, don't assume that your kids know what you know if you didn't teach them. Because I promise you, a lot of this stuff's not being taught in schools. And
no, it definitely isn't. I mean, we've seen that because, we don't have the electrician classes, the mechanics classes, the woodworking, we don't have home ec anymore. Everything is, even for, not to say on a sexist side, but the ladies just go buy stuff. It's all pre-made. They don't know how to make things anymore. And they're not taught that. They're taught the easy way. So, what advice do you have for parents? Is it tough love? Because again, the kids are learning this from their parents. So were their parents not taught? Because that's more our generation where, we didn't have those classes in school. They were starting to phase out, and it kind of probably depends on where you were raised, the region that you're in. But what advice do you have for parents now?
So that was that motivational Monday where we talked about it. I was kind of hard on some of the parents out there. And I told them, like, guys, look, you can't expect for these kids to have any other ambition if it doesn't come from you. You can't tell your kid that it's okay not to know how to use a broom. It's absolutely not okay. And if you don't know how to use a broom as a parent, then we need to start there. Like, in other words, nobody out here, there is nobody who is incapable of learning some of the basics. And if your kid doesn't know, if you don't know, like, for instance, I was a single parent for a long time. Okay. And I know what it's like to be a single parent. The one thing I don't know I don't know what it's like to be a single mom. Okay. Now, I also realize, and this is to parents too, my daughter, she did know how to work on stuff. She knew how to work on her cars. Amanda, my wife, she knows how to change a tire. She knows how to change the oil. She knows how to torque the heads on a Hemi. She was brought up that way. She knows her way around these things. But if there are people out there, and you hit the nail on the head, there are parents out there who are like that employee of mine who didn't know. And so, like, now what? If mom doesn't know and dad doesn't know, how are they going to teach Junior? So, like, we learn it together. What a better way to do something on a Saturday than, like, go to YouTube. For God's sake, I fixed a Samsung computerized electronic, did everything you could ask it to do washing machine, because I figured out that, like, I can fix it. Something's wrong with it. We'll fix it. So I went to YouTube. I looked it up on YouTube. I kind of figured out what was going on, and I tore into this $3,000 piece of equipment. And I thought, well, I mean, one thing or the other, if I tear it up, I'm gonna have to buy another one anyway. So I'm gonna at least try to fix it. It was out of warranty, and you know, it was one of those deals. Anyhow, long story short, I didn't wake up with all the knowledge. My dad didn't wake up with all the knowledge. Now, Dad was a little different story. He didn't have Google. He didn't have YouTube. The kids that are growing up today are the generation that will never, ever, ever get lost. Never. The kids will never get lost. You know why? Because they have one of these.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to read a map. Like,
no, you're exactly right on that. And you know what's really funny? And I'll just share a little personal story with you is when my youngest daughter was living at home, our big thing, you know, she was homeschooled, is for her to see the world, or the United States, I guess you could say. We would take road trips. I can't tell you how many hundreds of thousands of miles I have on my car. And even right now, I have a map of the United States in my car. And you could see where she would highlight things and where are we going and what town are we going to next. You know, you have to know how to read a map. And a lot of times the Thomas guides, they don't know, you know, because you'd have to find, you know, the A to the B to the, you know, to 1, 2, 3, you know, where it's located. And they don't have any idea, you know? And so that was something I was really proud of. And sometimes people laugh at me. They're like, you have a map in your car? I actually prefer it versus, you know, sometimes I kind of want to get a ballpark idea. Okay, I got to go here, here, and here, you know, kind of plan my strategy. Do I use my GPS to get around certain places? Absolutely, I do. But I can read a map. My kids can read maps. I grew up doing that. I used to take road trips with my dad. And it was always so exciting to look at that map and where we hit, what little town are we hitting next? And it was exciting. It was fun. Maybe I'm a weird one. I don't know. But, you know, and even too, I mean, we got to teach our kids these things. And I can totally relate to that washing machine thing, because that same thing happened to me. I didn't have the money to buy a new washing machine. And my washing machine was 10 years old. The bearing went out. So I'm like, okay, I got to buy a new bearing, got to take off the drive shaft there. I had that thing tore apart. One of my daughters comes in, she's like, what are you doing? And yes, I had YouTube up on my phone trying to figure it out. And I'd have to go over and over. I had no shame. I was not about to spend more money. And it eventually, even though I replaced it, it still went out. It was just done. But I sure gave it a try.
You got through it though. And that's the thing, like you got it to function but I'll tell you something that parents can do. And this came just from your conversation. This just hit me based on what you're saying. So my wife, last year we were going down the road, and my youngest is Blaze, and he's 8 right now, and he's homeschooled. And so she was like, hey, the next truck stop we stop at, I'm going to buy a Rand McNally, you know, big Rand McNally map. And I was like, awesome. And she was like, you know, I grew up with a map. And she goes, I know you know how to use a map and all that. She goes, but we're going to teach Blaze. And I was like, perfect. That's awesome. But after hearing you talk about you going across the country and doing what you did, so here's a way that I think we can entice the kids to use technology and use old school thought processes, because first of all, that deductive reasoning goes out the window. They don't have a thought process when they're following a GPS. They don't get to see what could have been or where they could have went. You follow a GPS, you might ride right past. You might be 15 miles from a national monument that you don't even know is there.
Mm-hmm.
because GPS is telling you stay straight or turn left or whatever. So anyway, here's something that the parents can do with a map. And it's actually something that I'm going to do myself this year. So technology, most kids have a phone. Most kids have a phone. Now Blaze is 8. He doesn't have a phone, but he does have a tablet. Okay. So here's what I think we can do with our kids. Get a map, show them the map, show them where they're at, show them where they're going, let them see that, but then have them look along the way at a stop they might want to make that's not too far off the map. Use their tablet, Google the location, find out what's there. And now you got something that keeps the little one busy, that'll be fun for them, and let them pick something out that they want to do when you have the ability to go and do it. And, you know, obviously, I tell you, Blaze, my kid would find something that costs $1,000 to go do, but like we need to, we need to do it within reason. Like take them to the, you know, like Metropolis, Illinois, home of Superman. You know what I'm saying? If you're coming down 24, if you're coming down 24, you see the signs for Metropolis, Illinois. Well, I know where Metropolis, Illinois is because there's a casino there, and I like going there. But it's the closest casino that I can go to and have some fun. But you know, it's home of Superman. There's a big Superman statue, and there's a lot of big stuff, you know, over there. And then there's another town in Illinois also that's home of the world's largest everything. So like it's the world's largest mailboxes there, and these little places like this are things that these kids can do. Teach them how to use a map, let them see and let them find a spot, and then use the technology to kind of educate them on the spot. You know what I'm saying? Like there's something that we could do that would be fun for a road trip, because kids, I travel a lot with kids, so kids could be a blessing and a curse all at the same time on a road trip. And let's face it, you already know you're going to have to stop and pee 34 times more than normal. So you might as well find something to do along the way. And
no, I completely agree on that. And that's kind of something that we would do. We had so much fun. I'm a road trip junkie. I love national parks. That's always been my thing. I love it. But I'd have my daughter, she'd see, like, I like mining and geology. I know, nerd stuff. But we'd find old mining sites as we're going through, you know, Nevada or whatever, or in Utah, you know, the petroglyphs that you didn't, it's just, and it's free stuff. It's all free, but you get out and you actually explore history. And I'll put it out there. I drive a Toyota Corolla, not the most fancy car in the world. And that car has been on some roads that really it should not have been on. But we made the best memories. And now that my daughter lives out of state, she's like, Mom, I miss that. Well, you're the one that chose to leave, but we can still do those things. And they do. And it's that hands-on learning. And I think, again, we made the best memories, and she saw the United States. She actually saw history and what made this country just so amazing, you know? So yeah, I know we kind of got off on a little tangent there, but I mean, it's true. It's just, you know, going back to practical skills of being able to read a map, you know, it's parents need to educate, but at the same time, if the parents weren't taught that, sadly, then how do they teach their kids? So it's kind of getting that practical knowledge and putting it back out there. And so again, going backwards a little bit to the skilled trades, you know, anyone that's wanting to do that. But again, even more than that, okay, so they have the skills, but do they have the work ethic and the drive? Because it seems that parents have been handing everything to the kids, and it's that, oh, you need to focus on this. You know, I'm sorry, I started working at 16 years old. My kids started working at 16. You want to drive, you better figure out a way to pay for it because mom can't afford it. You know, so they're missing. I don't think a lot of kids these days have strong work ethic because everything's been provided for them.
Yep. It's true. And that's just one of those things that, you know, we need to work on collectively. We can't say that we expect change. We expect our kids to be different, or we expect them to know something that they don't know. And we especially can't expect them to know it if we don't know it. You know what I'm saying? As far as the work ethic side of it goes, you know, fortunately, every one of my kids were athletic. And you know, my daughter, she ran track. She was very athletic. My son followed in my steps. He was a wrestler, and he's actually training UFC right now, which is also following in my steps. I did a lot of fighting back in the day. back when UFC wasn't mainstream and we did it in warehouses, but now it's mainstream. And then Blaze, Blaze has played, Jimmy played baseball and did football and all that stuff too. But Blaze is also following that same path. And so we've had him in soccer. He's been in baseball, but for the last year, we've had him in jiu-jitsu. And now he's learning some ground and pound stuff and starting to play with some kickboxing and some other stuff at 8 years old. So the sports has taught, my kids that like, it's not going to come easy. And, you make a mistake in a full contact sport, you're going to get hurt. And so that's a good lesson too. I'm not saying that everybody should take their kids out and let them get punched in the face. It's not everybody's deal, but it's sadly, it's not for everybody, but it's the way our family has been. And our kids, kind of rough and tumble and that's just how it is. And that teaches that self-discipline, and it teaches that, nothing comes easy and you're going to have to work for it. But it's the one thing that I think that we collectively as a society should do more of. And, are you going to get met with some resistance? I guarantee you will. When you tell them that they don't get to have, every minute of their time spent doing screen time, like they're going to learn how to operate a broom. They're going to learn how to teach them to check the air in their tires. I was late one night for one of our lives, and there was a 30-something year old man who had a low tire on his car at a gas station that's literally a mile from my shop. And he didn't know what to do. And I said, well, you put air in it. He had never used a air machine at a gas station, had no idea how to check the air pressure in the tire, had zero clue. And so I took the time, I helped him, showed him what to do. And ended up, I actually had my Milwaukee little air compressor for the race car in the car with me. My office is texting me. That was where I was at, and I was able to help the guy, and I showed him that thing, and he thought that was like, Elon Musk's rocket ship. See some little bitty small air compressor, and he was like, man, where can I get one of those? And I said, well, you can buy them all kinds of places. And he was like, well, I want one of those. What's that thing cost? And I said, well, these are a little high. This is a Milwaukee, and these things are about $350. And he was like, oh my God, it's only $1 to use that machine over there. I was like, right. But
Yep.
Same deal. He didn't know how to use the machine, but he knew it cost $1.
Gosh.
So, we have to teach the kids that, because again, this is a 30-something-year-old who didn't know how to put air in a tire. I mean, if you think about that, some of us that are car people, we laugh like, ain't no way. But no, that's true. There's a bunch of people out there that don't know. I don't know how to do brain surgery because my dad wasn't a brain surgeon, but I do know how to fix things, and probably the likelihood of you needing to fix something before you have to do brain surgery on somebody is probably greater. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and you're not afraid to try. That's the thing. If it's something you haven't done before, you're not afraid to try and fail. And that's okay too, So, and that's the other thing. I just kind of want to back up a little tiny bit as we, with the horsepower for kids and everything. And one of your big messages is anti-bullying. And I know that's pretty heavy, it happens a lot in our youth, but it also, to me, it's almost like a learned behavior because adults do it too. And I want to, if you don't mind, after losing Sierra, that was in the public eye, and that was a very difficult time. And you yourself were being, for lack of a better term, bullied and criticized. And these are by adults. Yep. And so it's almost like one of those, I don't want to know if it's a learned behavior, but kids are watching parents. And if they see parents being rude and disrespectful and hurtful, they're going to do that to children.
Yep. It's true. And I think that sadly, it's kind of my message on social media. Everyone will share something negative way before we'll share something positive. I'm talking about everyone as a society. If you look at my pages, you're not going to see a lot of negative stuff shared by me. Not anytime lately, not anytime in the last several years. Now, Anybody that watches my stuff knows that I own what I do. There was a time in the internet world where I too played that same game. If I didn't like somebody, I would, for lack of better words, cyber bully them. You know what I'm saying? Because like I was going to tell them what I thought. And then I realized that all that does is give them the attention that they're looking for. And that's why they get on there and do that stuff. But you're right. So I don't want your listeners to ever think that they like see this and be like, wait a minute, I remember Jim over on yellowbullet.com. Yep, you probably do. And yep, I've definitely been a person that would continue to egg it on. Not the guy that started it, but I would be the person who would participate. And it's kind of like a car wreck. I think a lot of us will slow down to look at a car wreck instead of paying attention and staying in our own lane. It has taken a lot of self-change, I guess you can say, on my part to like this past Monday. I just call it white noise. Those guys that are in the background just yakety yak 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 yak. I just drowned it out. It's like just treat it like white noise. Let them do their thing. Let them talk. If you're not paying them any attention, they'll get tired of it. And it's like I said, ask your hater. Ask your haters. They're the only persons in the world that think you're better than they are.
Absolutely.
And that's the truth. Like, your haters are the only people in the world that think you're better than they are. And that's a true story. And I've been teaching the kids that because like the bullying is such a big deal. And yes, you're right. When my daughter died, when Sienna died, it's always from a fake user. It's never somebody who's got enough guts to put their name next to it. It'll always be a fake account. So like, you just think about that. They take the time to go through the effort to set up a fake account, to get online, make fun of somebody or make fun of somebody's circumstances, or to try to feel good about themselves. But no matter what, fake user or not, those thoughts, that mentality, that's who they really are. Like they can hide it by putting a fake account out there and bashing and doing that stuff. But those thoughts and those typing and those things that they're saying, that's who they are. And I hope that those people listen to this, because if it doesn't haunt you, it should, because that's the person that you really are.
Right.
You have to have a fake account because you're too big of a coward to put your real name to it, because like you put your real name to it, now other people are going to see who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
And then you run into the cold hard fact that you might trip and fall someday when somebody's around that you've said some bad things about or talked about their daughter or whatever. But yes, I've had messages where just not long ago where a guy was talking about my daughter and what kind of a good piece of tail she would have been and all kinds of stuff like that. And just doing it to elicit a response. You know what I'm saying? Like they wanted to solicit a response from me. And that's the classlessness that these people are. And the one thing that we've learned is that these people are often people who know you, that you're associating with. Think about that for a minute. This is somebody that you probably pick the phone up with, call, confide in, talk to, and is usually one of your biggest critics. And those people, they like to play victim a lot. And and it's okay. Like I said, you know me a little bit now, and like when you make a mistake, like if I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. If I'm right, then I'll say, and I make mistakes every day, and it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes.
But you own it. That's the thing. A lot of people don't own it. And that's where, you have that reputation that you're a man of your word, you stick by it. And if you make a mistake, because, oh gosh, you're human. Yep. I own it. I messed up. My bad. And here's what I'm going to do to fix it. Yeah. And I think that's one reason I really admire you. And, when John and Lori, they're like, you got to talk to Jim. He's just straight up and you are. And that's something I really genuinely admire about you is the amount of integrity that you have.
I appreciate it. You know, if you get on the internet, you're going to find people who are going to say different. And
I don't care. Let them say, you know.
It's okay. I always say that, like, just remember those people who are talking bad about you are also the people that you did big things for at one time or another. They only started talking bad when you cut the snake's head off.
That's right. Well, you know, I know you brought up your haters, but I kind of want to bring up your biggest fan.
Okay.
Let's talk about your wife.
Yep.
And how amazing. Just, you know, real quick backstory. How'd you guys meet?
Well, so you remember me telling you that I switched off and started doing the drag radio racing?
Yep.
So, not to be taken the wrong way, because this is not how this goes. It just sounds a little funky to start with. So I met her through drag radio racing because she was Donald Long's wife, the promoter of all the radio racing. And so then everybody thought when we first got together that, like, you know, I stole her from Donald, but that was the farthest thing from the truth. She was married to Donald. She got divorced. And I was married. I got divorced. We were at PRI. We had met each other, known each other through radio racing. I'd actually raced against her before, but we were at PRI. We were both like 3 or 4 months post-divorce, and post-divorce being final. And we sat down at Howe at the Moon with one of my good friends, crew member. We were with Keith Berry, several others. And if you've ever been in a room where you got like a whole table full of people and everybody's talking, okay, her and I were sitting across from one another, and I couldn't hear anything else in the room. I could only hear her. And we sat there and we had a conversation and we talked about everything. I left there that night, and I told Mark, my crew guy, I said, well, that's my next wife. Aww. And he was like, what? I said, I will marry her. And he said, you're the dumbest individual to ever have feet. He said, you just went through a bad divorce. Like, why in the world would you even talk about getting married? I said, I'm telling you, I'm going to marry that girl. So from that time at PRI, for the next 7 months, Amanda and I communicated through private messenger, not a romantic conversation. We talked every single day, just about one way or the other, about something. We shared our goods, we shared our bads. She was going through a bad time with a guy. You know, we just talked. And after about 6 months, maybe 7, I actually told her that I was done texting and I was done sending messages, that if I didn't get to talk to her on the phone, she's really introverted. And I said, if I don't get to talk to you on the phone, I'm just not going to communicate with you. And she thought I was kidding. And I said, I'm being serious. If I don't talk to you on the phone, I'm done communicating with you. And so we ended up talking on the phone. It took a little while to get that to all happen. We ended up talking on the phone. And then probably the second time we talked on the phone, we talked, and I was a single parent. We talked on the phone that night from like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night until 7 the next morning.
Oh gosh.
Stayed up all night talking on the phone. And like we were like, holy shit, it's been like we've been on the phone 9 hours. So then a couple of weeks later, I told her, which was a lie, I told her that I had business to take care of, and I was going to have a business meeting. It just so happened to be right there where she lived. And I was coming to her town. So I drove to Dothan, Alabama, where she was living. I got a hotel and called her, told her, I'm here. I'm in your town. I'd like to take you out to dinner. We went out to Outback Steakhouse, had some food, had a good time. And we dated for about 3 days in Dothan, Alabama. She went to her house. I'd never been to her house, never went to her house. She met me. We'd go out, do stuff around Dothan. She'd go home. Well, we owned a drag strip here in Tennessee, and I needed to get back because I came through the week. So I had to get back to get to work at the drag strip. And so I called my mom and dad. They wanted to know how things were going. I said, good, I'm just going to let you know something. I'm going to marry this girl. And mom and dad were like, you are nuts. Like you've dated her 3 times. You're going to marry her. I said, I told everybody I was going to marry her 7 months ago. So, but I'm going to marry this girl. This is what I'm going to do. Nobody told Amanda yet. But anyhow, I went home. I went home and I was on my ride home, and she called me and she said, hey, I'm going to come visit you this weekend. I want to come to the track with you. I was like, okay, cool. So she packed her bag and brought her dog, and we were apart for 24 hours. She showed up in Crossville, Tennessee for that event and never left.
I love it.
Never went back home. We kept her house, made the payments on the house. We left it vacant. And like, I don't know, 7 or 8 months later, we went back there and got the rest of her stuff and started moving her here. And then a year later, we got tenants in the house. And by that time, we were already married.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I know she has really kind of been your rock just as much as you've been hers through everything. So I'm going to pull at the heartstrings a little bit right now. And what would you like to say to her for everything that she's done for you?
You know, she has been. We are sometimes like oil and water. There are some times when I'm sure that she wishes that I would just drop off the face of the earth. And there's probably times that I get like that with her. But at the end of the day, we always seem to find resolve, and we work together as a team to do better. And, you know, one of the things, she was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. And that's why she doesn't race anymore, because her ligaments and tendons aren't strong enough that if she were to be in a bad car accident, it would most certainly probably kill her. And the reason for that is that those tendons and ligaments that hold her heart and her lungs in wouldn't be able to do that in a negative G-force situation. So that's why she no longer drives in fast cars. Now we are talking, like, we've had many conversations about getting her back in a car that maybe isn't that fast. But the reality of it is there's really no testing to know what kind of negative G-force she could withstand. But, you know, she said the reality is that she just doesn't need to wreck. I said, well, I agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's why she hasn't been driving any of the real fast cars anymore. And it's a big deal to her, because I can't imagine not racing myself. And so I get it for her, but she's been through a lot. You know, when she met me, I was pretty broke, and we built a life together, and we built what we're doing now together. And she stood by me. She signed up for this crazy ass life that we live now. And you know, I make a lot of decisions that impact her, and she goes along with it for the most part. So, you know, I mean, yes, it's a blessing. Love her to death. There's nothing I wouldn't do for her. And people know that, like, they have got to see that side of me that I don't often like to show when it comes to her and protecting her. And you know, my kids and my wife are off limits, and that's
Absolutely.
a sure fire. I can go from 0 to prison real quick.
I bet that you're one person I wouldn't want to mess with, but that's one thing that I absolutely adore about you is you can be tough when you have to be, when, you know, that gentle side for your family, and anyone messes with it, you know, Papa Bear comes out, you know, and I totally get that. But, you know, your schedule is so full. You have so many wonderful things going on in your life. You've got, you know, motivational Mondays, you've got your horsepower for kids, and now you've got some other big news.
I do. So, the whole deal, everything that I'm doing, everybody's asked all year, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And I've been saying, look, I'm focused on the Horsepower for Kids program. That's really what I want to do. It's what I'm like, it's where I feel right at. However, one needs the other. Like, the racing needs to happen, but the travel and the being on the road 40 weeks out of the year isn't like, I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do by doing that. And the fact that the TV deal went away with Discovery. And so I was like, all right, well, I got to do something different. Started looking at booking dates, but then I started looking back at like, okay, well, you were a promoter for a number of years. You promoted. What would you do? Like, if I could change it all? Well, for years, I've been telling the powers that be at Street Outlaws, the brand, like, hey, this is what we need to be doing. This is being done incorrectly. You can't have just 3 or 4 superstars. Everybody in this deal needs to be as big of a deal as the next. And I tell our local track owners, track operators, I've said this for years, it's something that we've done for years. And you got to showcase, like, your track operators who are going to listen to this deal right now. Your guy that comes out and he runs trophy class and he wins a trophy, you need to celebrate that guy just like it was John Force that won an event at your racetrack. You need to celebrate your foot brake guy. You need to celebrate your trophy winner. You need to celebrate your super pro guy. Somebody comes out and does a big thing. It takes you 10 minutes to type something up. Put it out there. Give somebody the limelight for what they're doing. There's multiple reasons for it. First of all, the reason is that their family is going to come out and watch them race at your facility. Why wouldn't you want to recognize them? Because that's going to encourage him to build another car, or her to build another car. It's going to encourage the family. Like, hey, man, that was cool. He won. They made a big deal about him. Like, it's going to encourage them to build another car, so on and so forth. And I've been telling the Street Outlaws brand that for years, like, you can't run the same ad with the same 2 or 3 people. And in the beginning, it was told to me, well, those are the guys that win. Well, I kind of put that to the test, and we won a whole bunch, and was never really made a big deal about. And I kept telling them, I'm like, I'm not talking about this for me. I'm talking about the guy that doesn't ever win, who travels all over the country, who's number 32 in the points or number 40 in points. What about that guy? If you give him a shout out, maybe he can get a local gas station to give him a little gas money, a gas card or something. But it's like I was telling you, when we were talking on the phone, it's like selling a house with the for sale sign in the backyard. If nobody knows it's for sale, nobody's going to buy it.
Right. Exactly.
And so we have to promote from within. We have to promote our winners and our losers. And you got to promote everybody who supports you. And so I seen some flaws in what we were doing, and I set out to put my own deal together. And I told you we were promoting no time racing long before it was ever mainstream, before it was ever cool. Everybody thought I was crazy. Like, why would you have a race with no scoreboards on? Well, I'll leave that for another day. Why that ever came to be. But there was a tech reason. I'll just tell you that there was a tech reason why we needed a race with no scoreboards on, because there was a certain roll cage requirements that if you went so fast, you had to have certain safety equipment. So 20 years ago, I just got around all that by just don't show how fast the cars go. If nobody knows, I mean, can't say my car's an 8-second car, but you ain't seen it go 8s. So that was how it all started for me. Which looking back was probably not the smartest of moves to make. And now I tell people a whole different story. Like, make sure your cars are safe. You know how fast they are. You know how fast they need to go. Make sure they're safe, because when you crash one of these things and you crash them bad, you're going to be also glad that you took the time to make them safe. But anyway, that spawned the word. That spawned the new series, No Time Kings, which I put together, and we're going to do a six race series this year. We've got some TV partners that I actually have about 20 minutes from now, I have a meeting with them. We're trying to put everything together. And so I had dates, I had months and tracks listed. But I pulled those off the website because I have to make this work within the production side of things with the TV and everything that we're doing. So this afternoon, I'll either be really happy or I'll be really annoyed because I'm going to learn a different side of what we're trying to put together here than what I knew 10 minutes ago. But No Time Kings, it will have the Outlaws, Pro Outlaw class, which is basically the same cars that we run in No Prep Kings, steel roof, steel quarters, big tires, wheelie bars, big power. And then we're going to have No Time 28, which is a No Time 28 by 10.5 small tire class. Then we're going to have Blue Collar Outlaws, which is a 10.5 by 28, like 530 index. And then we're going to have a 6.0 index class, and then an invitational 8-car junior dragster invitational race at each one of these. And that's going to round it out as far as that program goes. And right now, I really wish I'd have kind of waited to announce it, because right after I announced it, then the people that I previously was racing with, they decided that these two were good ideas, and they just copied it and went on about and changed their deal also. But it's okay. What we want, and now I'm starting to see Kai Kelly and Ryan Martin and all these guys sharing these other racers who are going to race with Speed Promotions. And so, you know what? I'm probably blackballed from ever racing there again after me announcing that I'm going to be in competition with them. But at least they're making the changes that I kept saying for years needed to happen. And I'm pretty happy about that, because these guys, I know what we do. I know the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into following that series, the financial commitment, the home life commitment, and to know that they're trying to right some of those wrongs right now, that means a lot to me. Now our deal will be a little different. It will be on a pro tree, so there's no manipulating of an instant green light or any type of BS, when it comes to the tree. That's the one thing that our deal will be different. It's going to be on a pro tree instead of instant green. And we want to give everybody a shot to come out and be a star. Like, you can't claim you're the best or you're the fastest if you only ever race in your backyard. If you don't let anybody else come in and challenge you, how are you going to keep, can't say that you're the fastest or the baddest when you won't let anybody else come in and race with you.
Absolutely. And I love, I really love the program for multiple reasons. You're able to incorporate people that really wouldn't be in the spotlight before, the lower budget teams, if you will. And again, me, I'm all about kids and the junior dragsters. You're involving the junior dragsters. So, yep. That's great. So you're really growing drag racing and motorsports in general with this program. So thank you for that, because I know at the end of the day, that's what we need in order to, again, like I said, grow motorsports, which we do that. We're supporting our racetracks, keeping them functional so they aren't closing down. It just comes full circle. So what you're doing really is great for drag racing as a whole. So thank you so much for doing that. And I know a lot of people, think the same thing.
Well, I appreciate it. And our goal is just to make everybody have a place and make everybody a superstar. And our website's going to have driver profiles on it with links to all their social media sites. We are going to truly push everybody instead of the racers pushing the brand's going to push the racers. And that's the one thing that, I think needs to be done. We've got some other really cool stuff in the works too that'll come down the line. Like I put this thing together over the course of about a year, of how would I do it different? What would I do different? And we'll just see how it all plays out. No matter how it plays out, we're going to have a good time doing it. And I had somebody ask the other day, said, "What are you going to do if it fails?" I don't know. I guess we'll have raced some cool races and we'll figure it out. Like, it's my 36th year of drag racing. I can go run about anything I want to go run. So if this thing doesn't work, then, really, whose fault is it if it doesn't work? We're going to put it out there. So the racers that are always saying that they'd come do this, or they want to do this, or must be nice or whatever. Well, if it doesn't work, then we put the ball in the court. You just decided not to dribble it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're giving them the tools. It's their
Yeah.
job to pick them up and utilize them.
Yeah. I'm not gonna pay you to come race. I'm not paying you to come do what we all do. I'm going to give you an opportunity where you can get big corporate sponsorships. And seeing with the Street Outlaws deal, we weren't allowed that. You couldn't have. I had a very major company come to me wanting to put several $1 million into our deal, and I was told no, they'll blur it out on TV. It wasn't because it was anything bad. It was because exactly that company could buy commercial advertising on the TV channel. And if they could spend that kind of money on a race car, they could just buy a TV commercial. Well, they said, well, we don't want to buy a TV commercial. We want to sponsor Jim. And so it's not allowed. Well, with what we're doing, it's definitely going to be allowed. We want you to get corporate sponsors. We want you to do that stuff. And we're going to make it to where that's a possibility. And what I know about TV involves a remote control. You can turn it on or turn it off and switch the channels, but I'm getting ready to get a crash course in TV.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited about everything that you're doing. And where can people find information on your foundations, Motivational Monday, any social media, internet platforms? Where can they find you?
So Howe Motorsports on all socials. Horsepowerforkids.org is the website for the nonprofit that is in the works of becoming a nonprofit. It's not, there's nothing set up like right now. Anything that we're doing is operating as an entity and not as a nonprofit, but it is retroactive according to the attorneys. But anyhow, that's how that works. And really, by the time this thing airs, it could be official then. I don't know. I mean, it could be any day. But anyhow, the stuff's there. It's all out there to be done. That's Horsepower for Kids. And then notimekings.com. And then the social media sites for notimekings.com are out there also. But really about anything, the Howe Motorsports side of things, you can get to it all from there. You'll see it all from there. Motivational Monday is on YouTube and on Facebook. They kicked me off of TikTok because I said something that wasn't right. I don't know. But anyhow, I can't go live on TikTok right now. And it's I know why now that they did it, but it really wasn't anything that I wouldn't say in front of my pastor at church. But apparently it offended somebody. So whatever. We'll be back live on TikTok as soon as they lift the ban, as they lift my ban on TikTok.
Awesome.
But,
so everyone, so they can go out and follow all your pages and tune into the Motivational Mondays. And like I said, I get so much out of that. And, I really love what you say. I love the message that you're giving to everybody out there. And it's more than just to the youth, it's to the adults. And, I love everything that you're doing. And, and I thank you for that. I thank you for being such a positive influence. And like you said, you've grown. You used to be a different person, but it just shows that we can grow as individuals. And you really are, a solid representation of that. So thank you.
I appreciate it. We're trying, like I said, I think that we have the power to change who we are. And when I say who we are, I don't mean us individually. We have the power to change who we are as a society. We have a power to change these kids' lives, and we can mentor the kids, like, so that they don't maybe do the same thing that we've done. But at the end of the day, we're gonna keep throwing darts at the wall, and something's gonna stick, and that's the end of it. But I want to keep racing. I want to keep doing what we're doing, and I'm watching my son now, drive and race, and we actually have a couple bookings this year where he and I are racing each other. We're being booked in to race each other, which is kind of cool.
That will be an epic matchup for sure. I know everyone will be excited for that.
I'm very scared about it, and I'll tell you why. And your listeners will hear this for the first time ever, because when it was first brought to me, the answer was no. I won't do it. And I talked with my son about it, and he was like, "Dad, like, what's the deal?" And I said, "Son, I buried your sister." I said, "If you and I were to get into a wreck in these cars and you were to die, I would be beyond fixed. There's nothing that could fix me." And I said, "So, like, that's the reason why. That's why it's a no." And as he's gotten older, he's like, "Dad, like you always say, if it's our day, it's our day." I said, "Well, yeah, but I don't want it to be a situation like that." And he was like, "Dad, you race, I race, we buckle in, we all know the risk." He was like, let's do this. It'll be fun, we'll have a good time. So I'm going to go ahead, and he and I will race some side by side this year. And I look forward to it. Look forward to putting on a good show at some of these racetracks that we're booked in to go do that with. And I can't tell you right now about that because some of this stuff's going to be coming out in the near future. We've got a lot of really big stuff. And that's like you said, we're constantly working. Sadly, if I had $1 for every one of these commitments that didn't happen, I would have enough to build a tech center like we're trying to build in Horsepower for Kids. But we just keep throwing darts at the wall, and something's got to stick. And as long as we're changing these kids' lives, and we're doing a little bit, through Motivational Monday. I'll tell your people something. I'll leave it with this, and if it gets edited out, I understand. This movement, Motivational Monday, started on TikTok. I never went live on TikTok. I didn't know anything about TikTok. I watched it. I had TikTok on my phone. It was my morning entertainment. Like, I'd scroll TikTok and look at reels. I went live on TikTok for the first time, and I didn't have anything written down. And I still don't. A lot of my Motivational Mondays, I shoot from the hip. Went live on TikTok, and it was a motivational talk. We started talking about how society uses social media the wrong way, how they can do things better. Be a better person today than you were yesterday. Do something for somebody that you wouldn't ordinarily do, to somebody you wouldn't ordinarily do it for. And it started a small movement on TikTok for me. And that's what started this whole thing. And then in December 31st, Christmas Eve, or New Year's Eve, sorry, my anniversary, matter of fact, New Year's Eve, I did a Motivational Monday, and I wanted everybody to write 75 things down on a piece of paper that you wanted God to change in your life. Write 75 things down on a piece of paper that you want God to change in your life over the next 12 months. I promise every one of you, if you'll do that, December 31st of this year, 30% of that list is going to come true.
I love that.
We're going to go through.
I absolutely love that.
We're going through, and it's okay if it's self-serving. It's okay. Hey, God, I want you to provide me with a brand new car. God, I want you to give me more money. It's okay. If it's self-serving, that's fine. But you're going to run out of things to self-serve on, and you're going to be writing stuff that really comes from the heart by the time you get to 75. We're going to see just how much the power in that thought process is, and manifestation and all the things that are attached to it. And I'm going to share my list at some point. I don't have 75 on a piece of paper yet. I started this the first of the year. So I'm putting some thought into my stuff, but I can tell you that some of the ones on the top of the list are already coming true. So
I love it. I think that's great. And gosh, and I thank you so much for your time, for sharing your journey with us, for sharing everything that you're doing. It was really my privilege to have you here and today. So thank you so very much for that.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it. I got to get off this phone and get to putting out some fires. I got about 15 minutes.
Awesome. All right. Awesome. And thank you everyone for joining me on Top End Talk with Nitro Alley. Remember to go out and support your local racetrack, your local drag strip. Bring a friend. Let's keep drag racing alive. God bless you. God bless America, our military and first responders. And I'll see you next time on the Top End. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.